back, you learned in the first part of this program how use cases should drive the implementation of artificial intelligence in organizations. The Internal Revenue Service is taking a use case first approach to AI. To tell you more, Reza Rashidi, Director of Data Management in the Research, Applied Analytics and Statistics Division at IRS, and Jason Prow, Senior Partner for Data and Tech Transformation for the U.S. federal market for IBM Consulting. Gentlemen, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. Reza, I start with you. What are some examples of use cases where you're using AI within the agency?
In general, at IRS, we use AI in three different areas. One is in improving taxpayer service, and second one would be in compliance functions and supporting various compliance activities, and the third would be in introducing operational efficiencies in any aspects of internal operations.
How do you go about evaluating the opportunities that you have in each of those areas to determine if AI is the right fit or determine what kind of artificial intelligence applications are the right fits?
That's a very good question. We start with a business problem to solve. We don't do AI for the sake of doing AI. So we work very closely with the business units in identifying the problem they would like to solve. And if the problem that they'd like to solve mainly benefits from automation, traditional type of automation, that doesn't necessarily need AI. But if there is some aspect of the problem that can benefit from using an AI to make decisions or influence decisions, that's where we would look at various aspects of AI.
You touch on something that I think is an important distinction, because 3, 4, 5 years ago, there was an automation kind of revolution across the executive branch of the government. And a lot of folks got involved with RPA, and I think there's still a perception among the rank and file workforce that AI isn't much different. It sounds like, from the way you just described it, it's a lot different. Is that a fair read on my part?
I agree with that. Robotics process automation is essentially, sometimes they define that in different classes. At the simplest class, it's really automating very routine manual tasks, and it doesn't involve any decision-making or AI. But if robotics process automation is integrated with some kind of an automated decision-making where you can benefit from a model, an AI model, then it could also integrate AI. Just like any other information systems. You know, all information systems or applications are essentially about automating some kind of a business process. Then they may or may not benefit, and introduce additional further automation by utilizing an AI model.
Jason, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today. You were nodding your head very enthusiastically as Reza was talking, in particular about the difference between automation and the way people are using AI. What's the main difference that you're seeing as far as the way people are using these tools across government?
Yeah, absolutely. And what Reza said was spot on, right? RPA is a little bit more mundane and rules-based, right? You're configuring the technology to take a certain action. But with AI, you get a little bit more reasoning. Right, you get the ability to understand and interact with natural language, right, and you get a little bit more decision making, right. So that's really helped in improving the kind of personalized service that can be provided to the citizen or to the workforce. So allowing individuals to interact with technology the way you or I would interact, which is a huge advance in the way that people are interacting with technology. I think the second part of it too is really around driving that efficiency, right, really helping to accelerate decision making that hasn't been available before, right? So allowing the workforce to actually do the decision making as opposed to the gathering and consolidation of information.
How have you seen organizations be successful at merging cutting edge technologies like AI with the infrastructures that they have already? You can't just take the old infrastructure out, put new ones in, and go forward with this kind of technology.
Yeah, it's been with the advancement of cloud technology that's also allowed them to bridge the gap, right, where you have cloud capability that's able to interact with some of the legacy infrastructure. And I think the second part of it is technology itself has really begun to embed AI, right, that allows the technology itself to do more of the work as opposed, right, to actually, developing the specific algorithms or things of that nature.
Reza, what are some of the challenges you've run up against in implementing AI solutions at the agency?
The main issues has not been really from the technology perspective. We have an approach where especially in the area that I work in research applied analytics and statistics, where it's sort of an incubation area when we incubate new model technologies, and then we closely collaborate with our IT organization to scale those solutions to the entire enterprise. So I wouldn't say that technology has been the issue. The challenging has been, in order to make sure that we get the AI right. We are implementing it in a very responsible manner, because if you're delegating a decision making to the machine, you need to make sure that you can explain how the machine has made the decision, and you have and it's doing the decision making in a correct manner. So that's really the most challenging thing. I can give you some examples of very easy type of problems. Like one of the easy problems to state is, why can't we use AI like ChatGPT to answer all my questions? We are starting to explore applying those things with internal situations, because as you know, in ChatGPT, they're really good in basically imitating answers or intuitively providing answers, but whether that's factually correct or not, there's been examples where there are, we cannot guarantee that. So we're starting to use those type of technologies internally in a small and very defined problems in a controlled setting. And as we prove those out, we work with our IT organization to scale that and bring it to the organization.
Several leaders that I've talked to across government talk about using kind of programs like you just talked about only on their own data rather than just on whatever data is available. It sounds like that's kind of the track that you're headed on?
That's absolutely correct. For example, if we want to, we have a lot of internal documentation, and we are trying to build using AI solutions that, similar to ChatGPT, that our customer service representatives or internal, staff can use to access information easily. So we need to make sure that the responses come from our own document set, as opposed to the publicly available documents where the large language models have been trained on. So there are mechanisms to do that, and we're building a lot of pilots, and we're testing those right now extensively, more in internal settings.
Jason, how does one go about gauging the success of a pilot like Reza just talked about? What are the factors that make someone say, this worked exactly the way that we wanted it to, maybe we got different results than we thought, but it worked well, or this didn't really work at all and we need to either go in a different direction, or maybe this just isn't something that's going to work for us?
Yeah, I think the first element, right, is the accuracy or quality of the response, right?
Exactly.
Getting the response that you would expect to get from the interaction with any AI. I think the other part of it too is, what doesn't get talked about a lot too is also what is going to be the cost component to this. There's a lot of desire to leverage AI, right, without kind of understanding the implication of underlying processing capacity that's required. So not just the accuracy, but when you look at it longer term, what is going to be the cost of scaling this, and is the most effective way to do that? That's
exactly what your colleague Vanessa referred to at the beginning part of this program about the value, the ROI proposition. Yeah. How does one go about evaluating that effectively, Jason? Yeah, so in the government, right, you're really focused on how do you reduce the amount of time or reduce the backlog associated with a given task, because we're really trying to give time back to the workforce to complete the mission critical tasks that are on their plate. So I think that's a driving factor when you're looking at the return and how you define it. And then there's obviously always a cost component to it as well, right? And looking at how could you do it in a more traditional manner, right, by leveraging maybe less sophisticated technology, and do you get the same amount of return or a similar amount of return? Or is this really the right use of technology, understanding the cost element as well? That's similar, Reza, to the way that you talked about evaluating these programs at the beginning of our conversation. How do you tell somebody that maybe was really excited about a potential AI application, you don't really need that? I guess that kind of gets at the cultural issue a little bit, that maybe is more of a challenge than the technology piece, right?
That's a very interesting question, because I think you need to understand, why do they think they need that, and what is the problem they're trying to solve, and is this the right solution for the problem? I think that's really the core part of answering that question. One thing I wanted to add to what Jason said, one of the other factors that's really interesting, especially in the taxpayer service or customer service in our case, is also the quality of improvements in the taxpayer service. How much time are we saving the taxpayers and how quickly getting their issues resolved? One of the areas we are using AI, for example, in that area is basically trying to understand and identify the pain points that our taxpayers are going through. We see that a large portion of our taxpayers basically they file a return and they get the refund, so that's a typical journey within the right time. But then the smaller percentage where they might encounter issues, they have many phone calls, they have many visits. We try to understand what is the pain point that these taxpayers are experiencing, and then work with the different programs to see how that whole process can be improved in providing answers to that. So that's another way that we can measure the impact of introducing new technology or improving that service, and whether we have improved the taxpayer service, the duration, or reduced the number of times they have to call IRS to get an answer, and things like that.
The good news too, Jason, is just about every agency has undertaken an effort to make sure that they understand their customer journeys, to know where those pain points are, as Reza referred to them, and to be able to then think about how to use technology to address them.
That's correct, right? And that having that customer at the center of any IT program is central, right, to the success, right? Because what we're trying to do is to improve an outcome, right, and to improve an experience, and especially when you're talking about critical services such as a tax filing and return, you want it to be accurate, right, and you want it to be timely, right, and those are the things that matter most to those that interact with the IRS.
At the beginning of this conversation, Jason, Reza laid out taxpayer service, compliance, and efficiency as the three main areas that they're looking at the IRS. Does that fit with what you're seeing at other agencies across government, or are there other areas where people are thinking about AI technologies too?
I think 100%, right? And I think underlying the improved service or citizen service is, I think there's the application also to produce the analytics around how individuals are interacting with the organization, right? So I think you get some better insight into those interactions. But the three core around compliance, improving productivity, or driving efficiency, and the service is exactly right.
You were nodding pretty enthusiastically when Jason was talking about kind of gaining it sounds like a broader view in addition to the one-on-one, the individual experience, the broader customer experience. You're getting some visibility there too.
Specifically when he was talking about the analytics, that's in order to identify what are the pain points of a group of taxpayers. Essentially, you're looking at your customers and segmenting them and identifying the segment that's encountering issues. That really comes with the analytics that we're doing in the back end, and we're using AI in understanding what the taxpayer's issue was and how did the process answer the taxpayers, provide the service to the taxpayer, and identifying what improvements can be implemented. So that is actually a big area of using AI in the back office, which we've been doing that for quite some time actually at IRS.
You used an interesting term earlier when you were talking about how these projects mature. You talked about incubating these projects. That conjures an image in my mind of something that is forming and maturing and growing, and not just an IT project that you're working on. Is that the nature of the way that you think about the way you develop these at the agency?
Yes, specifically the area that I'm involved in. So when we talk about AI, it's really about the modeling part of it, and then there's a system that AI is engaged in. So first we need to understand and make sure that what we are building, the intelligence that we are building, is actually providing value, it's making the right decision before we can scale it and provide it to a large number of users or large number of use cases. That's an approach that we've had going on in at IRS for quite some time, and I believe it's proven very fruitful, as opposed to, because you prove a technology, you prove an approach before you spend a lot of time and effort in trying to build that and scale that at an enterprise level.
Jason, we're almost out of time, so very quickly I'll ask you the same thing I asked your colleague in the first part of this conversation. What would you advise Reza and his colleagues and peers across government to think about now that maybe is over the horizon for them, not to deal with immediately, but could be coming down the road?
Yeah, absolutely. And to build off the points that were just made, as you scale AI-based technology, or you're infusing AI into large systems, it's a non-traditional IT system, right? So the monitoring and the governance to ensure that the model's producing the output that's expected, that it's not doing things like drift, that it's performing the way that it needs to. It requires a bit more monitoring of the performance, and to make sure that you have the people and the organization set up to do that.
Jason, Reza, thank you very much for joining me. It's great to have both of you on the program. You can read more about AI at the IRS at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, AI and the modernization journey. IRS lessons learned when AI for agencies continues in a moment.